Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast here with Jessica Bun, and this is our Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 10 reaction and review. We are back at the ranch, but which ranch? There's a lot of both going on within this. We're still playing around with time. We're getting a little bit closer to maybe Beth or Kayce figuring out some of the truth.
They need to be a little more clear on what timeline I am at what place with this show. I was confused at one point where it was like we have Rip and Beth, and they're not in Montana anymore and they're at a hotel, and then all of a sudden Beth is waking up in the morning and she's at the ranch. I was like, what happened here? Like, I don't understand. But if they can get a handle on the different timelines and what they're doing to make it a little more clear of what's going on, that would be very helpful. If you're listening, Taylor, and you can go back in the time machine, beep, bop, 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 boop, and make it more clear where we are at what time.
Yeah, this is not a show that needs to be this complicated with this stuff. It's not Lost, where you need to have a flashback story and then a present story and then we're going to time travel.
Listen, you don't even need to be like 6 weeks in the past. You just need to not make it that they fall asleep in one place and wake up somewhere else.
This episode, it's at least moving the needle forward on some stuff. I feel like I've got a couple of crazy tinfoil hat theories as to where this show may be going based on the road that Kayce is going down. Plus, there's a couple of really interesting Beth and Rip lines that are sort of dropped in here. We're going to go through everything, though. Before you do, be sure to hit that subscribe button because we are here discussing Yellowstone throughout the rest of this season 5 / maybe final season, whatever they're going to call it. This is another thing. Just like this show doesn't need to be this complicated, Paramount, you don't need to make the future here as complicated as Kellen Reilly, Hauser, Cole Hauser. They're not the same person. They're in talks on their next show. Is the season 6 a spinoff? Nobody just announce what it is already.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're probably trying to take their time to see how people are reacting to this second part of season 5. And honestly, it seems pretty mixed.
Yeah.
I mean, some people have liked it. Most people did not really like how they dealt with John Dutton's death and that it was kind of off screen. I mean, what are they going to do, right? Kevin Costner not going to come back? Well, what are you going to do, right? Like, they kind of did the best that they could. But at the same time, people were kind of like, that premiere went nowhere really fast. Like, it was just like a big pile of nothing. I think this episode was a lot better than the premiere. It did get us moving in the right direction. But if you want to help us be moving in the right direction, make sure you join our Patreon. It really helps us here at the channel. And we are also covering Dune Prophecy exclusively over there in video reviews if you want to check those out as well.
Thank you guys so much. And yeah, I will follow up exactly what you said. I think this episode is much better than episode 10. I think it actually, episode 9, sorry, this is episode 10. I think it just did a much better job of sort of connecting the storyline from last week, giving us more insight as to what's going on. There were fewer long cowboy montages. I know that's a part of this show. It's not like I hate it or anything, but we're dealing with a very tiny number of episodes here. We kind of have to move things forward.
Yeah, and in the premiere, we were dealing with the death of John Dutton. We do not need big sweeping cowboy scenes when there's such a huge character death that is affecting literally everything. It's affecting the ranch. We even had Rip and Lloyd talking in this episode about like, well, I guess we better look at the want ads. Like, who knows what's going to be going on here? We saw Jamie is like, yep, I'm reinstating the lease. I'm doing this. I'm going to subpoena John's will. I'm going to get everything going back on track again. They're not going to be able to keep the ranch. And here we go. I'm just like, oh, wow. Okay. There is a lot of uncertainty here.
Yeah, there is. That's good. And that's exciting for a show like this. But if we're going to talk about any cowboy related elements in this episode, here's where I will give a small shout out to the great rattlesnake scene, because
it was so terrifying.
It was really terrifying. Also very true. So I have a lot of family that's from West Texas and kind of the whole big spring, Abilene, Snyder, like that kind of neck of the woods. And rattlesnakes are everywhere. Like there's a town called Sweetwater that even does like a rattlesnake roundup out there. At least they did once upon a time. I'm pretty old, people. I don't know what people are doing anymore, but
I know your grandma told me about the rattlesnake
yeah,
roundup.
and my grandmother at one point hit a rattlesnake with a shovel because it was in her backyard. It's like rattlesnakes are everywhere in West Texas, and you have to be prepared. It's a very hot place to be. They definitely got that sort of temperature correct. It's also Texas is a little bit more humid than I think people realize, and so that makes a lot of the heat even worse. But then, yeah, that all was very, very relatable and really well done. I think they kind of did a better job in this episode of establishing what these Montana cowboys are going through in Texas than even the first episode did, because the first episode was too caught up on, hey, watch this guy ride a horse around, and hey, look at this sweeping vista, which, sure, it's great. We know that Yellowstone is capable of that, but we actually want to see people within this element.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm just going to say now my biggest both tinfoil hat and fear.
Okay, tinfoil hat. Oh, and fear.
Kayce's going to die
before
the end of this. I am just sort of coming out of this
no.
episode and being like, okay, we've heard time and time again, as I said earlier, about they're talking with Cole and with Kelly about nobody has said anything about Luke Grimes and Kayce. And he is a pretty likable character. I think he's the most likable one of the Dutton children, but as the great Billy Joel once said, only the good die young. And I think I love Billy Joel and I love that album, but I think it's just that he is already in the process of digging around and, sniffing to try to get some information about who took out his dad, because he's pretty fully convinced now that, Jamie is responsible for it. But I think where this is going is Kayce is a livestock enforcer. Like, this is somebody who he's a part of law enforcement, but he's not in the FBI. He's not like some high-ranking official that he's going to be able to assemble the best and brightest to go and take on this mysterious organization. I think he's going to be able to expose the truth, but I think he's also going to be collateral damage in the process, because I think this show, it wants us to be surprised by what happens at the end of it. And right now, the very, very easy and predictable end of this show is that Kayce ends up being the person responsible for running the ranch moving forward. Maybe Beth and Rip end up getting involved in that somehow, but Kayce can kind of bridge the world between Monica's family, his own family. He can run the ranch. He's just the perfect person. And I think Taylor's off somewhere being like, no, I'm not going to give you perfect. I'm going to make you upset if you weren't upset already about what I did to John.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they kind of set up a little bit of smoke around your theory in this episode with that talk that Kayce was having with his son, and was kind of like, listen, like, let's talk about John. He's gone. How are you feeling about that? But also, what do you want for yourself? Because me, Kayce, I've never really known what I want for myself. And I've kind of fallen into all these different roles that none of them really feel right. I never really had like a straight path, like, Rip or anybody at Beth knows what she's, good at, or Jamie knows what he wants to do. And I've never really known what I want to do, but have been kind of expected to keep the legacy going and keep the ranch going and pick up after where John would leave off. But that I've never really been sure what I want. What do you want, Tate? And Tate's just kind of like, oh, I want to be a fly fishing guide. But like, I know that's not really like a job. And Kayce is like, no, that is a job. Like, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you want to do. And Tate said something very telling of foreshadowing, where he's basically like, whoever ends up taking up Grandpa's mantle running Yellowstone is going to end up dead like him. So like, I don't feel like I want that job. And Kayce's kind of like, yeah, I didn't really want that job either. I think he's going to get kind of stuck in that job that Jamie's going to subpoena the will's going to pop up. Kayce's going to be the person that's going to be handed the ranch, and he's going to be like, well, I guess I'm here now. And he's going to be maybe looking at not making it through.
I I feel like there's going to be a somewhat optimistic end to this show, and that I don't think market equities is just going to take over the ranch. I don't think that Taylor has to know nobody wants that. Nobody wants to see corporate America win at the end of Yellowstone.
Nobody wants to see Jamie win. I've said before in many videos that Jamie is my favorite character. He's not the most likable character by any means, and that is one of the reasons that I find him compelling to watch. He is such a good villain. Like, he's very complicated. He's lost, he's cowardly, he's mean, he's easily manipulated. He's fascinating to watch. But like, nobody wants to watch this show where Jamie wins.
No, I don't think that's going to happen. But at the same time, I don't think the heroes are going to get out of this spot, just completely clean. That's why I think it makes sense that, okay, they're going to take out Kayce. We're going to have some like combination of people ultimately running the ranch. But speaking of foreshadowing, as you mentioned, here's another bit of foreshadowing, everybody. Beth and Rip have this conversation in this episode where they're sort of imagining what their lives could be like if they weren't at the ranch, and they could go off and do anything, almost as though you're getting your own spinoff where you can go off and do anything.
And drink Taylor Sheridan's vodka.
Okay. But Taylor, we got to have a little bit of a talk here. You're already filming the show at a ranch in which you own in Texas, where you also have your own vodka. You also are running like 6 different shows. You also have made movies. You have enough money. You don't need to do this.
No, it feels a lot like they probably brought in the vodka placement, obviously, because Taylor wants to push his own vodka, and I'm sure sales went up when this episode went up, that everyone went and looked. I looked. I was like, is this a real thing? Is he actually pushing his own vodka? He absolutely is. Yeah. But it feels a lot like that conversation and that vodka showing up, and the conversation that Rip had with Summer about John Deere, and how John Deere started with, wagons and moved into tractors, and that while he knows that his job might be coming to an end and getting kind of weeded out, he will be able to adapt it into something else. That it's not just, okay, we have the ranch, that it's also, okay, do we have something else that we can use with the ranch? Do we have a type of merch or a type of vodka or another type of product that we can sell that's attached to the ranch, so it's not just this one thing, but it's 5 things? What else can we do with it? And I think that, as much as I'm like, oh my God, it's such obvious product placement, it also made a lot of sense when you tied in the John Deere story and them sort of realizing that they're going to have to adapt and roll with it. So let's say Kayce does get the ranch.
Yeah.
Jamie has already said that the family doesn't have enough money to be able to keep the ranch. So it's just a losing battle. It's only a matter of time, maybe a year. Okay, cool. Well, if they get together their own vodka or something else that they're able to kind of roll with the punches, they've got about a year to get that product out there and on shelves or available to the public, that then could be bringing in money. And because they already have some money to be able to back those products, they might be able to turn it around in a way that Jamie didn't know was coming.
Well, that's the thing. Everybody can adapt with the times. I know there is this predisposed notion of cowboys where they're like, what is a cell phone? And like these sort of deals. But this is 2024. And I think this show in particular, it's trying to paint that these people are multifaceted. They're not just stereotypes. Right. They're not idiots. And, somebody like Rip and Beth, who is extremely business savvy, that they can come up with other ways to facilitate the ranch, add something to it, find unique ways in order to keep it going. Like even the Chief Joseph Ranch, which is where Yellowstone itself primarily films, it's like they rent out parts of that ranch for weddings, events, because, there's probably a lot of people who doesn't want to get married at the Dutton Ranch and all of that sort of stuff. So I think that there's a lot of different ways in which they continue to facilitate this, while at the same time, you could still have kind of a core group of people who are back there working the ranch. You don't have to get rid of the bunkhouse people, but it's sort of a way to continue the show without just making the same show, which is something I don't think Yellowstone really wants to do.
Yeah, like we've had so many seasons of John is going to lose the land. Like
Yeah.
at this point, if they are getting towards either the end, and
Yep.
season 5 is the end, then they need to wrap it up where the land is just secure. Because I
Yep.
don't think they're going to be like, oh, and he lost the land. And
Yep.
it's like, oh, cool. We were on this journey to
Yep.
this miserable end. Or going into season 6, if they have one, that they have pivoted. And that way they can move into a different story that's not just, oh, season 6, could they lose the land? It's like, please stop it.
Okay, so I don't know if I made everybody mad enough when I said that Kayce was going to die, so I'm going to try to make everybody mad again now.
Oh, wow. Okay. I've got my hard hat on. I'm just going to kind of move over here.
Yeah, that's good, because I'm about to say I'm glad they brought Summer back. I know everybody in Yellowstone hates Summer. I get that. I'm not saying
What is
that
happening
she
in
is
this
my
video?
favorite character either, but this is why. I don't need to see Summer again after this. Let's make that part of it very, very clear. But one of the biggest problems I had with this last episode was that there was no real continuity at all between what happened in the first part of the season, where John was with Summer at the end of it, and then this next part comes up and Summer's nowhere to be seen, and like nothing feels connected. It feels like they brought her back to actually give us some sort of semblance of, okay, this was going on before John died, this is going on after John died, everything's a little bit more connected now. I do think that Summer was a failure as a character, just because I think the show was really trying to give off this message of, oh, here's Summer and John, two people from very different walks of life who can come together and, understand each other. It was a very idealistic view of the world that I'm not sure fully exists.
The Summer character was just a complete fail across the board. Like, yeah, sure, people from different walks of life can come together and have a relationship. It happens all the time. This is not like anything that's, wow, I can't believe, groundbreaking, people coming together. Okay, that happens all the time. Opposites attract.
Yeah.
But they really failed this character in so many ways, because it felt like she was just there as this person to learn about the ranching and this and that. Like that whole fight, I said this last episode that we talked about this when the fight happened with her and Beth.
That was bad.
It was so bad. The minute that she said, I have 10 years of fighting training in jujitsu, and she lost that fight, I was like, this is so unbelievable. It doesn't make any sense that would actually be the way that would play out. I understand that Beth is tough and she's got tough girl training, and that's great, but 10 years of learning how to fight, no way is she getting her butt kicked the way that she did. That was ridiculous. I am glad that they wrapped up the Summer story, but the way that they wrapped it up was so bad. John lied to her about being under house arrest, and she was never under house arrest, and she was always released. What? One,
Yeah.
why would Summer have not read her own release papers? It is just not believable in the least. Second of all, why would John lie to her about it? John is not like a super good guy or a super bad guy. He's got bad tendencies and lies and does some shady things. He's got the train station.
Yeah.
But he's also a good guy who does do some good stuff too. But he also had a fairly good, honest relationship with Summer, and there was no reason to lie to her. He would have been able to be like, okay, you're released, but do you want to continue on? And I think she actually would have said yes. And I know it's a chance, but to straight lie to her and be like, you're under house arrest and you have to live here. And she was just like, okay, and didn't even read her own release papers. I was just like, get out of here with this.
Okay. See, I'm glad they
It's
brought her
so
back.
dumb.
But that's a problem. John,
Oh my God.
the John part of it where he's lying to her, this is the only time I feel like Yellowstone in these 2 episodes has kind of trampled a little bit on John's grave. And I don't know if this is just like everybody's angry that Kevin didn't come back, or they just needed some sort of easy way to write out this character. But it did sort of feel like there could have been another way to write Summer off, where she's just going off and, I don't know, going to some other protest or whatever. Like, I'm glad she was back for the sake of continuity, but yeah, they could have handled her exit better.
They could have just released her and just been like, hey, your papers just happen to coincide with, what's going on, and you're released. I would have believed that more than John lied to her, and more so, she didn't read her own paper. She just took his word for it. If I was in some sort of situation, I think most people, if they were in a situation where they were possibly going to go to prison, there's some sort of legal thing that's happening to them.
Yeah.
They're not going to not read their own papers to know what's going on with themselves. It was so unbelievable. They just need to shoot this Summer character into the sun and be done with it. I don't need to see this character again.
Well, luckily, I could be terribly wrong here, but I think she's already somewhere drifting close to the sun. I'm hoping this is a farewell for that, because we also, at this point, we need to take a little bit of that time and give it to some other characters that we're very invested in, like the Colby and Teeter relationship, which I find really, really fun. Ain't been a lot of screen time for that so far.
No, I mean, like, obviously a lot of this right now is on Beth and Jamie. That Beth thinks that Jamie's behind what happened to John. She's right, but she doesn't know for sure. And, Sarah said it to Jamie and was basically like, it wouldn't matter what happened to John. John could have stepped on a rattlesnake and got bit and died, and it would still be your fault. She'd find a way to make it your fault, whether you were actually behind it or not.
Yeah.
She actually doesn't know anything, which is absolutely true.
Yeah.
The whole, like, look me in my eye and tell me, you didn't do it, or tell me anything, and that Jamie couldn't even muster up a lie. Yeah, it's something, but is it enough that it would have actually gotten Kayce making these calls? I'm just not sure. I feel like Beth needed to tell Kayce what she knows about Jamie, that he killed his biological dad, and she knows it for a fact. Like, that has to be the thing that she needed to tell Kayce, to be like, this is why I know he's capable of it.
It's time to bring in Mike Ehrmantraut here to tell Beth, no half measures.
That's right.
You can't half measure Kayce. You have to give him all the information. I think Beth is very much knowledge is power. When I used to walk into my middle school, we had this giant floor mat that said knowledge is power. And so we were reminded of this every day. Somebody needs to remind Beth that, yes, this is true. You want to have more knowledge than anybody else. But if you have somebody you know is your ride or die, your ally, who's never going to betray you, knowledge for them is power too. And Casey's never going to betray you. He might look at the world differently, but it's good sometimes when you are a hothead on the level in which Beth is to have somebody who can occasionally try to calm you down a little bit.
Okay, let's talk about that. Now, I know that no one's really going to agree with me on this, because most people don't like Jamie. I don't like Jamie, but I love Jamie, as I've explained. Like, I think Jamie is the worst of the worst. He's a tremendous villain, but he's very compelling to watch because he's so complicated, and he's all over the place, and I don't ever really know what he's gonna do. And for me, I mean, we've been covering TV for like 13 years. To have a character where I legitimately do not know what this man is going to do at any given moment, it's fascinating to me, because typically you can kind of ride where somebody's going to go, but I can't do that with Jamie. I just don't know what's going to happen with him, and it makes it really exciting. However, this is where I think everyone's not going to agree with me. Everybody doesn't like Jamie, and I'm sure everybody loves watching Beth slap him around. And she does all the time. I'm starting to just find it unbelievable that she would just be slapping him in the office, in government office, in front of everybody, like over and over again. Like, it just felt not believable anymore.
Everything around Jamie at the office at this point is quite possibly insane. In between the fighting that's going on, in between Jamie and Sarah doing a hanky-panky in the office, and it's just sort of like, okay, guys, this is...
Beth throwing her into a plant. Like, there's all of this just isn't believable.
Yeah, I understand it, Yellowstone, it is this sort of big over the top show, but it's also a lot of these things, actually literally everything we have mentioned here, they already did in the first half of this season. So it's like
Yes.
you don't need to reinforce that, Beth is going to go at Jamie in this way, that, Jamie and Sarah are going to do their thing in that way. We don't need all of that right now. I think what Beth needs to take a back seat here, maybe talk to Kayce and realize is that you really are walking a fine line that eventually Jamie or someone else is going to see you do this and then just call security or the police and get you arrested. And yeah, sure, you can be like, this man killed my father, but if you don't have any evidence of it, you're not going anywhere. And also, you're getting arrested, so you don't have any of the leverage in that situation.
Yeah, and that's the thing is Beth knows that Jamie's never going to turn her in, that she is going to be able to just keep hitting him and doing whatever. But it's just, for me, it's just getting kind of tired. Like, I have always really liked the Beth character. She's tough, she's interesting, she's smart, she doesn't take any crap from anybody, and all of that's been very compelling over the years. But at the same time, we're almost at the end of season 5, and the growth of her character has been so minimal, and it's been kind of disappointing to see. And I would say the same thing for Jamie. Like, Jamie has had little bits of growth, but then he just keeps falling back into the same thing. And it's been the same with Beth as well. Little bits of growth, and then she's just falling back into the same thing. I feel like there would be a little more growth from her than where we've gotten in 5 seasons.
But where I think this show really needs to go now is sort of establish this interesting almost secret agent angle where if they're going to stop Jamie, they have to go very, very quietly about it to get some places where these people Sarah hired are not going to be able to find out what they're doing. Like, this is going to be an exercise in discretion and subtlety, and unfortunately, those are not Beth's strong suits at all. And if she's going to continue to just like wander around with a metaphorical hammer and just like hammer things against the wall, it's going to be a problem unless the idea here is just to create so big a distraction that nobody is seeing what Kayce is doing over here.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that Beth is very smart, and while she's also a bit of a wrecking ball, and she is grieving, and when you're grieving,
Yeah.
you're going through it in all kinds of different ways. This is absolutely one of the ways that you grieve. You are angry.
Yeah.
But she was angry before this, like with Jamie and everything that happened between them. So this isn't any different than anything that's already been going on. Like, she just needs to get her revenge, and then it's time to grow this character into something else.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get something more on that soon. There ain't a lot of time left, so you guys really
No.
got to get the ball rolling, but
Yeah.
that's where we are coming out of Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 10. So hit that subscribe button right now so you guys don't miss any other coverage that we have on the show, and support us further by joining our Patreon for exclusive video reviews of Dune Prophecy, another big tier show happening right now. Thank you so much to our patrons for your support, and we'll see you here next time.